My name is Sarah Williams, and I live in a small town in Colorado, nestled between the majestic Rocky Mountains. I'm a regular person, no different from most. I was born into a loving family, married a man I thought was my soulmate, and had 2 beautiful children. My life was far from perfect, but I was content. Little did I know, everything I thought I knew about life, death, and the spiritual world was about to change forever. At the time of my near-death experience, NDE, I was 35 years old. I had a comfortable life working as a nurse at the local hospital. It wasn't the most glamorous job, but I felt I was doing something meaningful by caring for others. One fateful evening, I went to work as usual, but what I never expected was that I wouldn't make it out of the hospital that night. At least, not the way I thought I would. The beginning of the NDE. It all started with what seemed like a normal evening shift. I had been working for hours, taking care of patients and making my rounds. But as the night wore on, I began feeling faint, lightheaded, and exhausted. It was nothing unusual, just the fatigue from a long shift. I brushed it off and continued my work. But the next moment, I remember feeling a strange sensation wash over me, like a sudden heaviness in the air. I looked around, confused, and before I knew it, the room began to blur. Then, everything went black. I don't remember falling or losing consciousness, but when I opened my eyes, I found myself in a place unlike any I had ever seen. There was no physical sensation of pain, no pressure on my chest, no fear. It was complete silence. But it wasn't an oppressive silence. It was peaceful, comforting even, as if the entire world around me had stopped. I didn't know where I was or what had happened, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't in my body anymore. Meeting Jesus. At that moment, I felt a presence, a warmth that began to spread throughout me. It wasn't just a physical warmth, but an emotional warmth that touched the deepest parts of my soul. It was pure, unconditional love. And then, I saw him. Standing before me was a man in radiant light, dressed in simple white robes. His presence was overwhelming in the best way possible, and I felt an intense feeling of peace flood through me. His eyes were deep and kind, and as I looked into them, I felt as though he could see every part of me, the parts one had kept hidden even from myself. There was no judgment in his gaze, only understanding, compassion, and boundless love. "Sarah," he said softly, his voice filling the silence with a soothing melody. His words were like music, but they carried the weight of 1,000 years of wisdom. "You have been through so much in your life, and now you stand at the threshold of something greater than you can imagine." I didn't know how to respond. I wanted to speak, but words failed me. I simply stood there, staring at him, overwhelmed by the peace and love that surrounded me. His presence was so powerful, yet so gentle, that I felt I could stay there forever, wrapped in his light. "You have questions, don't you?" he continued, his eyes never leaving mine. I nodded. I couldn't find my voice, but my heart was full of questions. What happens to us after we die? Is there life after death? Why am I here? Jesus smiled, and it was a smile that radiated warmth and understanding. "You have always known the truth, Sarah. You just haven't remembered it yet. Life is not the end. It's merely a step in the eternal journey of your soul. There is a greater purpose for each of you, a purpose that transcends what you see in your earthly life. The journey beyond." He raised his hand, and in an instant, the scene around us changed. We were no longer standing in that ethereal light. Instead, I found myself standing on what appeared to be a vast field, stretching endlessly. The sky above was a brilliant blue, unlike anything I had ever seen. The air was filled with a sense of eternity, as though time itself had no meaning here. "Look around you, Sarah," Jesus said. "This is the truth of the afterlife. It is a place of peace, of rest, of love. But it is not your time to remain here." As we stood together, I began to see figures in the distance, souls who seemed to be walking in peace, surrounded by light. There was no fear, no sorrow, only an overwhelming sense of calm. And as I looked closer, I saw familiar faces, people I had loved and lost throughout my life. My grandmother, my childhood friend, and even my dog from years ago. They were all there, smiling. Peace. They are waiting for you, Jesus told me. But not yet, Sarah. There is more for you to do in your life. I felt an overwhelming sense of peace, but also a deep sadness. I didn't want to leave this place of love and tranquility. Felt like home, more so than any place on earth. But I also understood. My work was not finished. There was still so much to do, and I was being called back. The return. Suddenly, I felt a pull, like a force drawing me back to my body. I didn't want to go, but the presence of Jesus was with me, and I felt his hand gently guide me. You are not alone, Sarah, he said. You are loved. Remember this moment, and remember that your life has a purpose beyond what you see. I opened my eyes, and I was back. The sterile, bright lights of the hospital room flooded my senses, but the love, the peace, and the presence of Jesus stayed with me. I felt a deep sense of calm, knowing that death was not the end, and that I had been given a glimpse of something far greater than I had ever imagined. The message. When I woke up, I was surrounded by doctors and nurses. They told me I had died for several minutes but was revived. They couldn't explain how or why I had come back. But to me, there was no mystery. I had seen the truth. I had met Jesus, and I knew that death was not the end. My message to everyone who reads this is simple. You are not alone. You are loved beyond measure, and your life has a purpose that extends beyond what you can see. We are all on a journey, and though it may feel difficult at times, there is a greater plan. Never forget that love, true, unconditional love, is the foundation of everything. And no matter where you are, no matter what you face, there is a light guiding you, just as it guided me. I hope that by sharing my story, others will find peace, hope, and the courage to face life with a renewed sense of purpose. My near-death experience changed me forever, and I will never forget the warmth of Jesus' presence. And now, I live every day knowing that I have a reason to be here, because there is always more to the journey than we can see. The aftermath. The days after my NDE felt surreal. It was as though the world had shifted slightly out of focus, and I was standing between two realms, the physical world I had always known and the spiritual truth I had glimpsed during my encounter with Jesus. I couldn't help but reflect on the overwhelming love and peace I had felt. But there were also moments of doubt. How could I explain this experience to others? Would anyone believe me? But the more I pondered the questions in my mind, the clearer my purpose became. There was no denying what I had witnessed. I had seen the truth with my own eyes. I had met Jesus, and I knew that the message he shared with me was something I had to spread. It wasn't just about my personal journey. It was about the message he had entrusted me with, to remind others of the love that surrounds them, the hope that transcends earthly struggles, and the eternal peace that awaits. I started talking about it. First, it was just with close friends and family. I didn't want to be seen as crazy or delusional, but the more I shared, the more I realized the healing power of telling my story. People were drawn to my words, not because they were extraordinary, but because they were rooted in the most universal truth. We are all deeply loved. The call to action. One afternoon, while sitting in my living room, I felt a pull, like a gentle nudge urging me to take action. It was as though something greater than myself was asking me to spread the message on a larger scale. I remembered what Jesus had said, "There is more for you to do in your life." I had always felt a connection to helping others, but it wasn't until after my NDE that I understood the full extent of what I was supposed to do. I wasn't just meant to care for people in a hospital setting anymore. I was meant to share the message of love, hope, and spiritual truth in a way that would touch lives far beyond my reach. With that thought in mind, I started speaking publicly about my experience. I contacted local churches, community groups, and even schools. I shared the details of my NDE, but more importantly, I shared the profound truth I had learned. that love is at the center of everything, and that there is a divine purpose for each of us. No matter how lost we may feel at times, the response was overwhelming. Many people came to me after my talks, telling me how my story had touched their hearts. Some said they had been struggling with the idea of death, feeling hopeless or scared, but after hearing my testimony, they felt a renewed sense of peace. Others shared their own experiences with the divine, telling me how my words reminded them of the love and light they had felt during their own difficult times. The healing journey. But the most profound impact of all came when I realized that I was healing as well. Each time I spoke, I could feel the weight of my past struggles, fears, insecurities, regrets lighten. The love and peace I had experienced in that place beyond life became a part of me, and I no longer felt burdened by the things I once thought defined me. I understood that my past pain had a purpose. It had led me to this moment, this understanding of the divine. In time, I began to help others more actively. I started working with people who had experienced grief, loss, and trauma, offering them not just words of comfort, but the truth that I had received, that love transcends all boundaries, and that even in the face of death, there is a greater, eternal life waiting for us. I became a counselor for those in crisis, guiding them to understand that their struggles were not the end of their story, but rather a part of a much greater narrative, one that stretched beyond this life and into the infinite love of God. I also became more involved in my local church, sharing my testimony during services and events. The church embraced me with open arms, and I felt that I had found my true calling. Through my experience, I had learned that our lives, our struggles, and our triumphs are all part of a larger tapestry, woven together by the threads of divine love and purpose. A deeper connection. As time went on, my connection to the spiritual world deepened. I began experiencing moments of divine insight, where I felt guided by something greater than myself. It was not always a clear, dramatic experience like my NDE, but more subtle moments where I could sense the presence of the divine, whether in a quiet prayer, a gentle breeze, or a fleeting thought that would comfort me during a difficult moment. I also found myself connecting with others who had similar experiences. There were many of us, people who had brushed up against death and returned with a newfound understanding of the divine. We would meet in small groups, sharing our stories and supporting each other as we navigated this new life. It was through these connections that I came to understand that my experience was not unique. It was a part of a much larger phenomenon, a shared human journey of spiritual awakening and growth. The final message. As I reflect on the life I have now, I can't help but feel grateful. Grateful for the second chance I was given. Grateful for the love and wisdom I encountered in my NDE. Grateful for the message I was entrusted with. One that has transformed my life and the lives of many others. The most important lesson I learned during my near-death experience is this: you are loved. No matter where you are, no matter how far you feel from peace or purpose, the love of the divine is always with you, surrounds you, supports you, and guides you even in the darkest times. And if you ever find yourself lost, uncertain, or afraid, remember this truth: you are never alone. There is a light within you, a divine presence that will never abandon you. No matter what you face, that light is the love of God, and it is always there, waiting for you to reach out and embrace it. I now live my life with a profound sense of peace, knowing that my time here is part of something much greater. Each day is a gift, a chance to love, to grow, and to share the message that love is the answer to all of our questions. My NDE showed me that death is not the end, but a new beginning, and I live each day with the hope and confidence that one day, when my time comes, I will once again meet Jesus in that place beyond life, a place of eternal peace and love. Until then, I will continue to share my story, to spread the message of love and hope, and to walk the path that He has set before me. The message for you: if you're reading this, I want you to know that whatever you're facing, you are not alone. There is a higher power, a divine love that is always there for you. guiding you through every trial, every heartbreak, and every moment of doubt. Hold on to that truth and let it light your way. We are all part of something greater, and our lives are filled with purpose. Even in the hardest of times, you are deeply loved, and that love will carry you through.